Welcome to the Truman Charities podcast. I am Jamie Truman, your host. I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with Victor Marx for our Vanishing Fathers series, an international humanitarian and the founder of All Things Possible Ministries. Victor has been through the unthinkable as a child. He endured a childhood marked with physical and sexual abuse, multiple stepfathers, and going through 14 different schools. Victor has been able to overcome his childhood tragedies to become a loving husband, father, and now he and his wife put themselves in harm's way to reach and restore victims of trauma. This is Victor Marx's story. All right. Hi, Victor. Thank you so much for coming on to speak with me today.
Oh my gosh, what a joy. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah, as we were just saying, I've been following you for a while and gosh, watched some of your films and you're everywhere. You're a best-selling author. And I think you couldn't have been a better person to speak with today about the project that we're doing about really strong men and strong fathers in society and what you've been able to kind of overcome.
Yeah, I tell you, you guys are spot on. I think that's probably the biggest issue we have in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of others, but we're talking about the root source, the cause of. And, for those your listeners who don't know me, I mean, I've done, I think, 16, 17 pumps to Iraq and Syria and plenty of contact with terrorists. As a matter of fact, I think 2 weeks ago, 10 days, we just got back from Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And we're dealing with rockets being shot at us from Hamas and helping those who have been horribly affected. And I tell folks this, the greatest threat to America is simply the lack of men to be fathers and dads. That's the core issue. And it's not even terrorism, because if we have the men, if we have the dads, and we're reproducing ourselves and young men, then the culture will be much better.
Yeah. So I want to start out and learn about you and your background. So can you tell me a little bit about where you were born and your family dynamic as a young child?
Yeah, I was born in Louisiana to a mother who had was no longer married, and I had 3 siblings, and my father and mother didn't make it, which is very common these days. It was a lot more uncommon in the 60s. And my father was he had his own personal issues, as did my mother. And it was really a horrible, we call it the perfect storm, told by both of my parents the night that I was conceived. My dad put a pistol to my mother's head and then shoved rosary beads down her throat. And, there was, my mother could have aborted me. She didn't. And I try to be always more grateful for the things that didn't happen than the things that did. Because it can always be worse. I think it's a trap when people come from challenged backgrounds, that they stay stuck in being a victim and or saying, well, I survived this. Well, you got to move from surviving to thriving. And believe me, the journey's not necessarily pretty. And I'm happy to share with the audience, but as a result of my father not being there, my mother would marry, 6 times. And I went to 14 different schools, 17 different houses. But I was a vulnerable kid. I was at the time, the baby of 4. And my mother met a highly intelligent, well-educated, degreed, former military intelligence officer who was, at the time, I think, running a college bookstore. His favorite author was Ernest Hemingway. But he had challenges in his life of perversion and addiction, and we would later find out horribly that he was a pedophile. So I was one of the siblings that suffered under that. And my mother, bless her heart, had dissociative identity disorder, or multi-personality for people. So under high stress, she would just check out. And I used to blame my mom for a lot. She's responsible for decisions she's made, bringing things in the house, but also know people kind of do their best with what they have.
Mm-hmm.
And, all you do is just wait to grow up and not repeat the cycle. And that's what I did. But as a result, uh, this fella ended up torturing me as a kid from ages 3 to 7 and abusing me. And it resulted in 123 visits to a trauma specialist later in life to try to get my head together. So I've been on Depakote, Depakine, Prozac, Zoloft, lithium. I was diagnosed at the VA as ultra rapid cycler bipolar 2. It started off in depression, and really one of the biggest things it was just post traumatic stress,
Mm-hmm.
and it became a disorder in my life, and I think that's where so much of the challenges came in.
So tell me a little bit about when your mom met the stepfather who ended up
Okay,
abusing you.
yeah. If you don't mind, I'll bring in my cup of coffee for this
I
with
have mine
my
too.
Marine Corps cup right here. Well, my mother, she was a single mom with 4 kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I, you know what? Thank you for asking me this. Most people don't, which is what I would say is the second biggest problem in America are women, girls,
Mm-hmm.
insecure, vulnerable, horrible decision making females that repeat cycles. And they oftentimes want to blame people when it's like, hey, sister, suck it up, buttercup. That's you. That's all you. And I think women, gals, teenagers, of course, they're more vulnerable than dudes, but it doesn't give them a reason to just pile headlong into horrible decision making. And that's what my mother did as a single mom with 4 kids. This smooth talking, nice guy. This is a key. If we ended this conversation right after this, it's worth the takeaway and the coffee and getting to meet you. Beware of nice guys, ladies. And I'm talking junior high, high school, college. Beware of nice guys. And let me explain this.
Mm-hmm.
Nice guys, they'll do whatever they need to do to get to you, to get what they want from you. Of course, they're going to be nice. They want to jump your bones, put you in the sack, touch your bathing suit parts for you young gals. That typically really is the end goal. And young men and older and especially perverts will be very nice until they get what they want or they don't. And then you'll see the true character in them.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I tell people, I'm not a nice guy. Ask ISIS, ask pedophiles we've hunted. But I try to be a kind man. I try to be a gentleman, a kind person. And you know what? A kind man will do the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about what that was like during that time frame when you were younger. Did your mom have any idea what was going on with you and your siblings, or was this something that she was unaware of?
I think both and.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I think both and. She got pregnant pretty quick with him and had 2 children. So she was a mom, but then she was being abused by him, which this is the hard part for people to understand regarding true victims, not people who just kind of, but real victims. Like he held her pistol at her head numerous times, just her and him in a room. And he would make her confess to things she never did, thought, or said. And, he would threaten to kill us as kids. Um, and so she was a very broken person. So, do I think she knew some things may have been going on? Yeah. Was she probably able to compartmentalize? Yeah. Other things she had no clue. We've talked about it as adults. And, in tears, she would just say, I didn't know that was happening, which isn't uncommon either. You know, people who abuse children, they're very good at what they do. So this reinforcement in the lies, and of course her own abuse by him.
And then what was it like for you at school? So you had all of this going on at your house and then you were going to school.
I like you. You are asking the right question. Am I right, Kendall? You are asking, because I'll tell you, everybody, I get tired of doing interviews and podcasts. I
Sure.
mean, I'm on networks, I'm on, there's it, but when people ask the right questions, I know it's not about them or what they're doing. It's really about helping people. That's the right question. I cannot even remember the last time interviewers have asked me questions like this. So hats off to you, sister. Um, Great. So yeah, I'm at school. Um, I'm fun. Um, I'm uh, I'm vivacious. I'm a normal kid, but I couldn't process things right. So I was not good at any type of schoolwork. The only compliment I remember is having a little, this was like first grade, an outline of a picture of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher's like, here's the crayons, don't eat them, future Marine. And I remember just shading in a tree, black and brown. And the teacher, she was astute enough to know that something wasn't right about me. I had behaviors in the class that wasn't normal. There was a hamster in the class, little cage. And I just stuck my finger in there till he bit me. And then I was bleeding everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
At recess, there was a playground, and there was a utility truck driving slow through the playground. I hopped on the back and rode it all the way out. I'm first grade.
Oh.
Um, I get sent to the office for doing other stuff. I leave class. I find a teacher I like more. I go sit in her class as much as I can. They're like, what is wrong with you, boy? And I'm like, a whole lot.
So what was it like for
So
you while
yeah.
you were in school and you had all of this kind of chaos going on within your house and then you would go to a friend's house? Did you even notice the difference between it, or could you kind of
Yes.
digest or comprehend that your house was different?
Yeah. So it's weird. When you're a child, you really can't process extreme abuse. You can't, and trauma. So you'd think at a certain level it's normal,
Mhm.
right? I'm sure something goes on behind closed doors for them. Uh, or, you say, I'm just a bad kid. And innately, there's something wrong with me because I keep getting in trouble. But I remember, this is now middle school, hanging out with the cool kids. I mean, these were cool dudes who were athletic. All the girls liked them. They were smart. And I remember they let me hang out with them. And I was like, wow. I guess it was just, hey, he's part crazy. You can be part of our group. You can do the crazy stuff. You can steal. You can throw water balloons at cars going by. You can, I'd do about anything to be accepted. But I remember, um, sorry, John
Yeah.
McClendon. Damn, John McClendon. The McClendons. His dad worked in an oil field. His mom was so kind. I can remember going to his house, especially on Saturday morning, and they had waffles. They just had these waffles. I thought it was the coolest thing. And then they had certain cereals that I'd never seen because we were so poor. My mom was single. She struggled. There was 6 kids in the house, no support from any of the other fathers. And they were so kind. They were just so kind to me. I just remember wanting that. It was such a place of hope that would get me along to the next crisis in my life. But I remember thinking one day, I want to have a family like the McClendons. And do you know, way later in life, in my 40s, I connected with them again. And the
Well,
father had passed, but the mother was still alive. And I found her and found my buddy John. It was actually through all social media. And I remember calling her and just saying, thank you.
mm, that must have meant so much to her because she didn't even know. And I see that a lot when I talk to people. It's that you may not even know what kind of impact you're having on a child by them just watching you. And she didn't even know until how many years later, right?
Gosh, decades. And you
Yeah.
know what? To this day, because I'm 59 on my next birthday. And to this day, she still follows us on social media, her son, her family. And I let her know, just like I'm talking now, that y'all were one family that really helped.
So I want to know, that was in middle school. What were your high school years like? So your stepfather had left at around
He
the
had
age of
left. Yep.
7, and then you guys moved. And at this point, your mom is kind of in and out of relationships. So it's a little bit unstable of homes.
Right.
And so what was that like for you in high school?
Yeah. The abuse stopped at 7. We left my stepfather at 10
10. Okay.
and moved into some apartments. And then, you know, it wasn't ever if, it was just be when in our life. When is the next tragedy going to happen? And I remember my brother's making friend with a neighbor girl, and everything's cool. And I used to go over there, and she was older, and we just sit and listen to records, and just me and her. My brothers were sweet on her, but I was just the younger brother. And then one night, uh, she only lived with her dad. He traveled a lot. Then one night, the police knocked on our door and said, "We need you to come with us." So we walked over to the apartment. It was upstairs. And why they do this, I don't know to this day, but they wanted us to see where she shot herself. And she committed suicide with a shotgun. And I'll never forget the pellets and the meat in the walls. And the cops are looking at me. Do you know anything about this? And I'm like, no, I was just over here like yesterday. And and they, I had her in a body bag, and it was stuff like that, death, homicide, rape, abuse, trauma. And when you're living in those conditions, it's like all these kids in the inner city who are ransacking places, and they they're living in a jungle. They're living in a war zone. They got to be held accountable for what they do. But man, if the parents don't raise kids in a solid environment, you think they're just going to turn out normal. It's not. So by the time I got into high school, I tried sports. I got into music. I was in the band. And I was always cute to the girls. That I remember that it's like, you're so cute. And I'm like, I don't want to be cute. I want to be dashing. But I was a little bitty guy. I was just a little bitty, come here, you know. And and my mother had married again. I think that was her 4th or 5th time. And he was a commercial diver, which I thought was cool. I thought, wow. And he made really good money. And there were days he stayed, in decompression and worked for an oil company like 30 days. And it was like, wow. But he was a quiet fella, and I liked him. We could talk. Everything was cool. But Then one day I came home from school. I got in trouble and I got suspended. And my mother had told him, you need to whoop him. You need to discipline Victor. And I'm like a sophomore. So I come home. He had taken a 2x4 and carved it into a paddle. And he says, he was part Native American. He was real quiet. He pulled out that paddle and he hit me a few times with it. And then I turned around and said, don't. I'm a full grown man now. I'm not being hit or hurt by anybody else without. And he saw my eyes were kind of crazy, the kind where like I'll wait for you to go to sleep and get even. So he walked me to the back of the trailer house and he opened the door and he goes, I'll never forget this. He looked at me, he goes, if you ever get in my face again or threaten me, he says, I'll take you in the back and we'll do it like men. And I said, fine, I don't care. And he said, but I want you to see something first. And walked me into the house. I thought, well, what? Walked me into his bedroom, reached underneath his bed. And I was like, oh, shoot, this is going to get weird. It was a briefcase. And he put the briefcase out, opened it, laid out newspaper clippings. And he said, read this before you ever get in my face again. And he walked out. I'm like, what? It's a guy that's handcuffed in front of a judge. He's got a ponytail. I'm looking, and this fella had gone into a bar, got in a fight, pulled out a gun, shot a couple of guys, killed one. The judge sentenced him to Chino prison in California. And I finished reading it. It's my stepfather. Yes, you see your look? Wait till you watch this. I was like, what the hell? What? And I was like, and I remember calling my mom. I didn't even touch it. I called my mom. I was like, hey, mom, do you know you married a murderer? And she's at work. She goes, of course I do. I was
Oh,
like, oh my gosh. Okay. I said, well, when were you going to tell us? Like, this is something she goes, well, I figured I'd tell you when, or you'd find out when you need to know. She goes, apparently you needed to know today. I was like, I'm going to go wash this truck. I'm going to mow the lawn. I'm going to like, hey, what's up, step pops? We're good. Right? Knuckle, knuckle. And, he did the best he could. He was actually a good stepfather.
mm-hmm.
He married a woman with 6 children, and he had never, I don't think he'd been married before. Said later when we talked about it, he said in the bar, because he was part of a gang, a biker gang,
Mm-hmm.
and which you would have never known. But boom, he shoots these guys. They were threatening him. And then he shot himself. That's the part I didn't know. He goes, yeah, I shot myself after I shot them because I thought, well, I killed them. I'm going to prison. I don't want to go. So he shoots himself, survived. He said that while he was unconscious and all that stuff, he had a near death experience and he actually went to heaven. And God told him, he said, the Lord told him, you can't come yet. You have a mission. It's a woman with 6 children.
Wow.
And yeah, so he ended up going to prison, got out of prison based on a scholarship of being a commercial diver. It was like Bud's Navy SEAL school, and he made it. And then he got hired by McDermott Oil Company. So, and then soon after that, he met my mom, and she
Wow.
had 6 children. And he's like, wow, this is my mission.
Now,
So, yeah.
are they still together?
No, unfortunately, my mom, she repeated her cycle.
So tell me a little bit about why you decided to go into the Marines.
Well, honestly, it was about my only option. I
Mm-hmm.
just graduated high school barely. I was working in a country club, I mean, a bar at night and like a department store during the day. I'm stealing stuff. I got caught stealing. I'm a little I'm a little kid trying to be a bouncer. Guys are throwing me around. The regular guys are like, "We got this, son." They're like, "We like your heart, but you better, you better eat." And man, uh, Beirut bombing happened, and most people don't remember, but it was the largest loss of Marines' life in one incident, and it was in 1983, and where a suicide bomber, VBED, drove a van into barracks, Marine Corps barracks, and it exploded and collapsed the building. All those Marines were killed. And I remember seeing it on TV, and that was what I needed to direct all this anger in me. Yeah, I had my fun, happy, but I had so much anger from my whole job. So I went down to the Marine recruiter the next day. I was like, "Can I kill Arabs? Can I kill Muslims?" He was like, "Sure, sign right here." And at the time, I didn't know there was a difference between terrorists, moderate Muslims, extremists. I just like, "Oh, let me kill them all." And that was my motivation for joining. And it was under President Ronald Reagan. That's what not, I mean, that's how far I go back. And he was a great commander. But it was the Marine Corps that really taught me discipline, gave me skill sets I never had before, showed me how powerful the human mind is. And what I learned is my mind is far more powerful than my body. And I have tore up my body on every possible way I can by pushing it. And it's 6 months before I got out the Marine Corps. I was only in for a 3-year stint back then. But 6 months before I got out, my biological dad, who I'd never been really connected to, I saw him once when I was 6. I thought my stepfather was my real dad, right? They had to tell me later, "That's not your real dad." I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I was a teenager, but boom, he wrote me a letter. And it was a letter that really changed my life as far as the course of it. God had been drawing me, and he writes me this letter, and he apologizes. As a dad and a man, he apologized for his failure. And if I can tell any dads out there right now, any men, and just own your stuff. What does it cost you to be humble? To say, "Look, I've messed up." And believe me, I have 5 children. I have apologized plenty. Everything from, "I don't know how to be a dad," to, "Oh, the hole I just put in the wall." That's not a good representation of God the Father. That's a dad who just lost his temper and is physical. But still, to me, that was great because I never hit any of my kids. Like, I've never punched my wife, partially because I'm scared. My wife's a black belt. She's a shooter, and like she can work a blade. Those things don't turn out well.
I've seen videos. Yeah. So how did I'd be scared. So how did that feel when you got this letter?
Well, I was mad at first because he called me son. He goes, "Dear son," I thought, "Son, you got my mom pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
You've never been a dad. Don't call me son. Don't." I remember that but then I kept reading the letter because, "I know you think I'm crazy." I'm like, "Yeah, you were in a mental hospital, you know, for homicidal tendencies." And it's the same mental hospital that his dad, my grandfather, who I never met, died in. So, I'm fighting this eternal, "Oh my gosh, that's my future." Uh, but then he goes, "I am crazy, but this time for Jesus Christ." And I'll tell you, Jesus Christ, that man, that religious figure who claimed to be the Son of God and who helped children, protected women, offered himself as a sacrifice for, sinners, people doing wrong. He's the only one constant in my life that's always helped me. From my childhood to this day, he's the one constant. And it's my dad in a letter saying, "I've surrendered my life to him." I
Now,
thought, wow.
at this point, did you have a relationship with Christ?
Not a not the type of personal one that I have now,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew him as of a child. I was church and all that. But I didn't have a personal relationship, and I to where you surrender, because
Mm-hmm.
as a you can have a head knowledge, but the heart knowledge is like it's like your husband. Y'all fell in love, but you need to put that ring on you, right?
Right.
And that's the deal of going. You do love me.
Mm-hmm.
You love me enough, and you love him enough to take his last name.
Right.
It's that type of where I but it was so compelling, the letter, that something happened to my dad. He was a practicing Morlock before, and all this type of stuff. It was really weirded out. But I went and visited him. He asked me to come visit him.
And what was that
And I was
like?
like, it was freaky, kind of weird.
Yeah.
Here I'm looking at a man who's my dad. Now I'm a man. And, he was a fighter. Uh, my grandfather was a professional fighter. We have this lineage of getting hit, but his nose, we've all had our nose broke so many times, but his would just stay broke. It was flat, big forearms, tattooed. And I'm like, whoa. And he wasn't perfect. I mean, he had come to faith, but he was still kind of mixed up on some things because he
Mm-hmm.
was a former pimp. So it's like, he had to work through some sanctification processes with women. Uh,
Right.
yeah, and he did, but he invited me to church. I
Okay.
didn't want to go at first, but he had some fighters that he was training, black belts, that were going to go. I was like, yeah, I'll go. And then I went, and I just simply heard the gospel of that person of Jesus Christ, what he did, and that he loved me. And if I would just surrender my life to him, I could be forgiven. And while I'm listening to this, I mean, guess what? I'm not blaming people anymore. I know my own things I've done wrong. Yeah, not heinous as torture and abuse of children. I got my own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And because if you look at the Ten Commandments, you kind of have to look at those things. And I'm like, ooh, I about broke them all. And all of a sudden I could feel the love of God, like his a felt presence of love. I never felt love in my life. That I will say, nothing. I never felt love in my life until that point. And I remember just going, I didn't know this was all real at this level.
Mm-hmm.
And I surrendered right there. I just was like, I, my gosh, you're getting the bad end of the deal. I'm getting all the benefits. You're getting this broken young man. And yet God touched me. And that was June 22nd, 1986. And that
Wow.
was the beginning of my walk with him. And
Uh-huh.
also my biological dad, us being reconciled.
Okay. How was the relationship after that with him?
Rough.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, okay, you don't get a pass
Right.
of never being there. And also, my mother had programmed me to believe the very worst about him. And there was a lot that wasn't hard to believe that was bad, but not all of it. And then I ended up, I mean, the worst it ever got, because he's an eighth degree black belt, uh, judo, jujitsu, boxer. But the worst it got, I mean, we're driving and we start having words, and I'm like, oh, and where? And he just goes, boy, you like me, got it all pent up inside. He goes, pull over. And I pulled over. It was a very fast, like 2-lane highway. It was horrible. I
Mhm.
pulled over. We got out, stood in front of the car on the side of the road. He goes, let's do it. He said, just come get all you want. And I remember him making his fists that looked like clubs uh in his arms, and he dug into the gravel. And I thought, man, these cars are whizzing by. If we start fighting, one of us or both of us is going to get run over.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget. I just said, we'll do this later. He goes, all right. Got back in the car. Never did it. I have sparred with him and been hit by him. It was like getting hit by a doggone telephone pole, quite honestly.
My. All right. So can we talk a little bit? I want to know a little bit about when you met your wife. What
Yes.
was that like?
Yeah. I had started going to church after that incident. It was like 6 months later, I met my wife. A friend invited her to come to church. She didn't have faith. And I had learned that, don't be unequally yoked. So you gotta, you want somebody to have the same faith, or, but I remember seeing her walk into the church, and I was like, oh my. She was breathtakingly beautiful. There wasn't another woman that could fare. There's no, it's typical church. Young women are wanting to get married. She wasn't. Like, she was different. It's like she didn't need a man. It was just in the sense of, she didn't seem desperate. She had won Miss Fitness USA. Um, she had her own career. She was in the fitness instructor and all that. And it was a gal was bringing her to church. And I remember she would just sit there and listen to Bible teaching. And then she started coming by herself. And then about, I don't know, 6 months into, she ended up giving her life to Christ. And I was ready to pounce. I was like, "Oh, now, same faith. I'll disciple her." And I really could feel like the Holy Spirit said, "Don't, you'll mess it up." And she took me out for my 22nd birthday. We became friends. Mm-hmm. And I can honestly say I never had like a girlfriend, a girl who was just a friend. And I mean, I was sweet and, on her, but she was just a friend. Mm-hmm. And we would talk, and she knows my birthday coming up, my 22nd. She goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I go, I don't know. She goes, "Well, let me take you to dinner." I was like, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah." So we went, Veracruz Fish House. I'll never forget that. San Marcos, California. And we went and had dinner. And, she's just talking and we're visiting, but I'm looking at her like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. She had green eyes, drew me in. And then I went home that night, and I'm writing in my little prayer journal in my prayer closet, which was literally a closet. And the Lord said, "This is the woman you've been praying for." Because I used to pray for her. Never met her, like never. But I would pray. There'd be times I'd have intense prayer. "Lord, whoever my future wife is, please protect her right now. Help her." And I prayed like I knew her, but I hadn't. And then here, fast forward, meet her. But that night, the Lord says, "This is who you've been praying for." And of course, I was like, "This is my wife." So I'm ready. I'm ready just to ask her to marry me. And the Lord's like, "Slow down." I'm like, "No." And she ended up coming into the church to try to get counseling from a pastor, because she was dating some guy, right? A guy whose brother was a pastor. And he ended up being a planting of the enemy, which I'll tell ladies, be careful of the nice guys. They can be plantings of the enemy. Doesn't matter if they have churchiness or whatever. But she came in and she's like, "Is there a pastor?" Because I was at the church. I said, "No, no one's here right now." I said, "Well, what's going on? Tell me." She's like, "Well, I'm dating this guy, and he still wants to party, like wants to go out and party." She goes, I don't want to do that. I'm a new Christian. I don't want to do that." She goes, "What do you think?" I go, "I'll tell you what I think. I think that dude is like the spawn of Satan. You should drop him like a bad habit right now." And she's like, "Oh, and this is the honest truth. When people who know me know, yeah, this is not a stretch for Victor, especially as a young man." I said, "But hey, anyway, now that we got that settled, I'm looking for a wife." I tell her right there, like I'm looking at you, I'm like, "I'm looking for a wife, and I don't even date. I just want to get married, and I'm probably gonna be a missionary in Africa, live just above poverty level, but I want someone that, And she goes, "Wow, wow, wow, Victor," and she, of course, is more mature than me. She's like, "That's very sweet of you to, offer." And she goes, let me pray." And then, bless her heart, she calls me at like 5:30 in the next morning. She's crying. She's like, "Victor, I know you. I mean, I really know you have emotions for me. I mean, you're looking for a wife." And she's like, "We're just friends, and I've got to make sure this guy I'm dating isn't the one for me. It's, I'm like, whatever." So literally, it was about a year after that that off and on she broke, blah blah blah, and then that was over. And I was so mad at God. And I'll tell young men and women, don't compromise. Don't let your heart get broke if you're not willing to let God mend it and heal it.
Mm-hmm.
And listen to him. Even though I knew that was my future wife and I believed it, I wasn't willing for God's timing because the Lord needed to work things out in her and me. So about a year later, she came. She was teaching at one of my karate schools, again, as a friend. And then I remember going, my dad, my biological dad, he moved out. Anyway, we did some. We went to her house and her sister, and that was the first time she ever like looked at me different.
Mm-hmm.
First time. It was always friends, and guys don't really understand this, but gals do. You can literally not have an attraction to a dude and still be friends. And I said, well, what was it? She goes, well, you offered to give me a little private lesson in my living room after dinner. My dad was doing the dishes. He was like, yeah, you go get that private lesson, boy. And she goes, you were in your Jabot jeans. And that was like some famous jeans back there. She goes, all I know is it was the first time I looked at you going, oh my, you're kind of cute like that. I'm like, we're talking about this because next month's 35 years we've been married. I'm like, can I just order some Jabot jeans? My waist is still, I got a 32-inch waist. I can wear them. She's like, you don't need the Jabots no more, honey. I said, I'll get them. I'm free. So yeah, from that point on, we knew. And again, she had to, you know, once she committed to me, it was like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't waver at all once she knew. And so I proposed 3 months later, and we were married 3 months later. Uh, but I will tell your viewers here, the best thing I ever did is not have sex with her. We could have. We were full grown. We had been in
Mm-hmm.
relationships before, but we decided to make a very intentional decision to not have sex until we're married because we're both new Christians. And we're like, yeah, that never really worked out. Let's do it God's way. And I mean, it took me like, I don't know, a month and a half to
Mm-hmm.
ask to hold her hand. I mean, I was so, and it's because I cherished her so much. She meant so much to me. And, and we proved that you can have self control,
Mm-hmm.
right? In this day and age, in this culture, nobody thinks you can. Man, people sleep with everybody. It's ridiculous. God really has a plan and desire, and we did it. And we didn't wait long. The engagement wasn't long, but we got married. And of course, I wanted to have intimacy with my wife. And I think after we're married, she wanted to. No, we were naturally drawn. There was that excitement but it was beautiful. And I'll tell you folks, 35 years, I've never cheated on my wife or been cheated on.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are listening, going, well, we don't have that story, or I'm a single person and it's like, hey, we'll just start purity now. That's
Mm-hmm.
all. And if you're married, make your marriage pure. Don't let other things come in. And look, I had a bunch of messed up stuff I had to work through. And God did work it all out. But, honor the one you love. And if you're dating, just tell them, hey, are you willing to wait for me? I'd like to follow this God's prescription. And gals, I'll tell you what, that's what I always tell single gals. Because they ask my wife, how do you get a man like the one you got? I'm like, tell him, babe, you just tell him. And I said, I'll tell you, don't sleep with a dude. If you want to know if somebody really loves you for you,
Mm-hmm.
because sex is not a sustainable aspect of relationship. It's actually a small part. It's a beautiful, wonderful, amazing part. But if sex was the most important aspect of a relationship, then guess who would be the most sought after women in the world? Hookers
Mm-hmm.
or girls in the porn industry. But they're
Right.
not, sadly. and I love them, and there's no less value in them. It's just the world lies to people. But that's how I met my wife, and thank God she is stuck with me when, she's like, yeah, other gals would have got you shopping, but they would have returned you with the receipt. I'm going, right? It's like, this model's broken.
I would love to hear about what it was like when you found out that you were going to be a father yourself. Since you have
Another great question. You're all up in my mind, woman. That nobody asks these questions. These are so good. When Eileen, we decided, I mean, right into our marriage, it's like, let's have kids. And we can practice a lot, you know. And
finally,
yes, finally. I mean, literally, it was like, yes. And no guilt, no shame, safe, loving, right? It's the way God intended. But I remember, we said, I mean, let's have a baby right away. This would be great. We'll start a family. And we did. We got pregnant like right away. But when she told me, I'll never forget this. I was in our room, a little 1-bedroom, guest studio, which is so great as young married people. You just kind of grow together. You don't have to have it all. You don't have to figure it all out. Just grow together. But she came and she goes, honey, babe, I'm pregnant. And she showed me. I was like, oh my gosh. I was so excited. I'm hugging her. I'm kissing her. I'm like, yeah. And I remember laying on the bed, just like, and then I got terrified. It was the most horrible feeling. And I remember I had a quick conversation with God because Eileen was like, honey, what's wrong? And I said, I'm so scared. I don't know how to be a dad. And I don't want to be the dads that I had to see and live under. And she's holding my hands. She's going to be a great dad and all that. And I loved her reassurance, but this was a heavy fear. And I remember God's spirit when I talked to him. I was like, I don't know how to be a dad. I don't know how to be a father. And it was so simple. He goes, I did. And I'll teach you everything. And it settled it. Because the Bible says God is our father. And I thought, wow, okay. I never had the fear anymore. And we end up having 5 children, 3 kind of back to back. Then we took a 10-year break, and then we had 2 more. Mm-hmm. And now we have 5 granddaughters. And we just thank God for this. So yeah, I'm at this stage in my life where I've won. There's nothing my wife and I don't want, haven't done. Mm-hmm. We won. And I literally kind of just started breathing easy a few years ago. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, it all came true. All God's promises. Hardships through. We were separated twice. One time I loaded her up, I'm like, you better go to your mom's. But God, we never wanted to divorce. Mm-hmm. We never thought that was an option because we both come from divorced families. And there is a place for divorce. I'll tell you people right now. Yeah, abuse, I would say habitual infidelity, all this stuff, but not divorce for, I don't like him anymore. Mm-hmm. Really? Seriously? I mean, give me a break. It's too hard. Like, knock it off. Suck it up, Buttercup. Stick together. Stay together. Don't give up. It's worth it. That's what I would tell young people.
So I would like to know, what was it like when your first child turned the age of 3.5, when you started having these abuse situations with your stepdad? How did that make you feel looking at your child and seeing them at the same age that you were?
Okay, are you a psychologist? We're just meeting, but you're asking all these like real psychologist questions. Yes, I totally was triggered. I mean, there were certain stages my
Yeah.
kids age when they're young. It of course it triggered me
Hmm.
because I'm seeing them and thinking, who in the hell would abuse a kid like this? Who would torture a child? Who would so rage and anger and legitimate anger? But what do you do with it? That's the problem. You can't stuff anger. It's gonna you either pull a grenade and throw it, pull or eat it. And the Lord was the only one that showed me you gotta give me your anger. You gotta let me walk you through this. It was very unjust what happened to you. But what's the good news? What's the great news? Like I said in the beginning, it's I'm not gonna do that. This child will not have to go through this. And but it was horrifying. And my stepfather was still alive at the time. And so, part of me wanted to go kill him, even though he'd been to prison. Um, but God did the most amazing thing with him and me, which is miraculous. It's the crux of probably my story and movie that people can watch on YouTube. But yeah, it was now where I struggled, and I struggled because I asked my kids when they're all older. I said, "Hey, if I could do it different, what would you want? Just tell me." And they were like, "You know what? You were a great dad. Only one thing, you were overprotective." And that's part of PTSD, this hypervigilance. And it's miserable. And people think, oh, it's worry. No, it's extreme anxiety. It's extreme anxiety where I'm waking up 3 times a night, checking the doors and windows. Where our home is fenced in. I've got dogs. I've got guns. It's constant. And I did suffocate my kids. And you know what? I can tell you, do your best you can, but we live in a pretty dark culture and bad things are going to happen. So, but I'm thankful. None of my kids got abused. And that was the main thing. And now I'm telling them, protect your children. It's worse than when I was a kid.
What do you think is the main thing that you wanted to instill in your children?
Well, my wife's scripture, her life scripture for the family is I have no greater joy than for my children to walk with the Lord. That's her, like life verse for children. I hope I'm saying that right. And I think that's the same for me. Is just know him. Just know him. And if you seek first his kingdom and all his righteousness, all the other things will fall into place. It's when you don't and you do what the world says to be happy, it's going to be miserable. You can do all you can, but ultimately your kids at a certain age, they have their own free will. Prayer is probably more important than duct tape or zip
Oh,
ties.
well,
You just stay right here, youngin.
I know,
Yeah.
right? It'd be nice if you could just keep them in your house the whole forever.
Yeah.
But I would love to. But I could literally talk to you forever. I have so much more to talk about, but I know that our time is almost up here. And I want to ask you one last question, that is,
Yeah.
what would your advice be to young men that are going through a really tough time right now?
Yeah. First, it's a cliche, but tough times don't last. It will not last. Second, don't just kick away from tough times in a weird way, kind of embrace it. Like in the Marines, we call it, or combat, we call it embrace the suck, right? Just embrace the suck. Yeah, acknowledge it. This sucks, but don't give up. Know that it will help build your character. Two, if anybody that has abuse in their background, the shame is not yours. It was never yours. So don't take a perversion of somebody else and make it your own shame, no matter what happened, no matter how you complied one time or 20 years. It's just not yours. It's on them. Um, and then the final thing is keep hope, faith, and love in front of you. Keep it in front of you. Hope, faith, and love. And the best person that has ever embodied that is the God man, Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Well, thank you so much. I wish we could talk for a lot longer because you've accomplished more than most in several lifetimes. So we could talk.
This is true.
I mean, I could talk for an
I,
hour just what you did a couple weeks ago in Israel. I mean, it's just amazing all the missions you've been
well,
on.
where are y'all based out of?
So right outside of DC, Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay. Well, if me and my wife get that way, we'll come over and drink some coffee with you and your hubby,
I would love
and we'll
to.
visit. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yes, I would absolutely love
And
it.
then I'll extend this invitation to y'all. We're based in Colorado Springs. We have a training center, but we also have on the back part of this acreage, we have a chalet. It's private. You and your husband can come here anytime you want, stay in the chalet. And then we have a shoot house here. We got a range. We got a dojo. We'll
I
do
love
training
it.
for a day.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
tell couples, come on, come spend a couple of days. Y'all buy the tickets. We'll cover everything else.
I
So that
love it.
is a real invitation.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Yeah, my husband and I love going shooting. It's a good time. It's fun.
Okay, great. Yeah. We'll do blade work. My wife can teach you some stuff. I just got 2 weapons sent to me by a manufacturer upstairs, which Kendall, we're gonna shoot today. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So and then I know my wife would love to visit with you. You're of her sort, I can tell.
Oh, good. All right. Well, thank you so much. So this is just take care. I'll see you soon then.
Yes. And I would tell folks, if you're interested right now, those of you listening, to learning more, go to Sean Ryan. It's a podcast, the Sean Ryan Show. I just did 3 interviews with him. It was 5.5 hours. I've never done anything like that. I will never do it again. But he captured my life in a way nobody has. And
Wow.
that's where I'm telling people, if you really want to get to know me and the details, go to the Sean Ryan podcast. It's on YouTube and all the other channels. You'll actually see my gun disarm. Go to my Instagram or my Facebook, and we have links to it. But I did the gun disarm. And those of you who don't know, it's like monkeys and symbols deal. But I hold the world record for fastest gun disarm. But I did it on him. Like in 4 days, it's got 1.7 million views. So really fun stuff. And I would encourage, especially young men and men, go check that out. Get a little, little splash of testosterone, and then and hear more about my life.
All right. Well, thank you so much and have a great rest of the day. We'll talk
You
soon.
as well. Thanks for having me on your program.
Of
Loved it.
course. Loved it. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode in our Vanishing Father series, please make sure to rate and review this podcast. The reviews really do count. If you'd like to hear more about the statistics and further understand the impact on fathers in society, please purchase our book, Vanishing Fathers, A Ripple Effect on Tomorrow's Generation. All proceeds from the book will directly go to charities that are helping at-risk youths. And if you'd like to follow us online, you can go to our website, trumancharities.com, Facebook @Truman Charities, Instagram, Jamie_Truman Charities, and you can follow me on LinkedIn @Jamie Truman. Thank you so much for listening to our Vanishing Father series, and please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes. If you enjoyed this episode in our Vanishing Father series, please make sure to rate and review this podcast. The reviews really do count. If you'd like to hear more about the statistics and further understand the impact on fathers in society, please purchase our book, Vanishing Fathers, A Ripple Effect on Tomorrow's Generation. All proceeds from the book will directly go to charities that are helping at-risk youths. And if you'd like to follow us online, go to our website, trumancharities.com, Facebook @Truman Charities, Instagram, Jamie_Truman Charities, and you can follow me on LinkedIn @Jamie Truman. Thank you so much for listening to our Vanishing Father series, and please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes.